Hello, hello, hello. Good afternoon. You guys are seeing the wrong screen. Let's try that again. I have actually done this before. There we go. Much better. If you are looking for the Brandon Hall Group webinar on smart content management, how to drive learning success with AI, which I just butchered that title, you are in the right place. Thanks for being here. Give everybody time to join us. Folks are still coming in. In the meantime, be like Debbie. Find your chat window and let us know where you're joining us from today. I am in what has been rainy, but is today kind of sunny and windy South Florida. And our speaker today is joining us from somewhere else, but we'll hold on to that for a minute. Excellent. Hello, 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 as everyone's joining us right at the top of the hour, and it looks like a few more trickling in. Yeah, I see that note, Leslie. Gloomy Central Florida. It was gloomy here uh, yesterday and the day before. I think we had about 24 hours of rain. Awesome. Great, great, great to have you guys. Hello, Peter from Edinburgh. Hello, Amit from India. And hello, Peter from Planet Earth. All right. Well, as I said, this is Smart Content Management with AI, How to Drive Learning Success. Today's Brandon Hall Group webinar presented by Docebo. I am joined today by Jay Colbinson. Jay Colbinson is the Senior Product Marketing Manager for the Learn platform at Docebo. Jay has spent a solid 2 decades diving into distance learning, leading teams in media and content for training operations, marketing, and commercial enablement. Prior to his current role at Docebo, he was a loyal customer for a cool 10 years, making waves in a massive, highly matrixed organization with 150,000 plus employees, tackling business challenges like ISO validation, AI, AR, XR, and dished out personalized tech savvy learning experiences that drove customer and commercial success. His skill set's a mix of marketing, commercial enablement, training, instructional design, and leading creative shared services like video production, 3D animation, and motion graphics and mixed reality. Jay likes to say he sits at the sweet spot between code writing, technical expertise, and creative art and design. Jay, it's great to have you with us this afternoon. And where are you joining us from? Let's let folks in on the secret.
Yeah, I'm joining you from the beautiful city of Monza in Italy, just north of Milan.
Jay and I are on opposite sides of the globe for our time together today. But we're really excited to have you here, and I'm looking forward to jumping in. So let's get some of the housekeeping out of the way so we can get on with that. So we do want to thank Docebo, who are our sponsors for today. You can learn more at docebo.com. They are the world's most powerful learning platform. Uh, some great stats there about their business and their place in the markets. We are really grateful to our partners at Docebo for sponsoring today's session. If you are new to these webinars and don't know that much about Brandon Hall Group and how we work with organizations, we work with you in a variety of ways to help drive HCM excellence. We work with providers and corporate organizations alike. We do have a research membership. We have our excellence awards, which many of you may be familiar with, and we have some big announcements coming up about that here in the next little bit, and as well as our certification programming as well. You can learn more about that at our website at brandonhall.com. And at the heart of everything that we do is our survey and research practice. And so we do have a couple of surveys still open as we are closing out the year and prepping for 2024. We invite you to add your voice to these topics. We do want today to be as interactive as we can possibly make it. So you've already found the chat uh, button or the chat window. Excellent. You can also use the Q&A panel to submit questions to Jay and I as we go through, and we will address as many of those as we can get through in our time together as well, and be on the lookout also for some polls, a polling experience a little bit farther into our time together. And with that, I think we are ready to jump in. And I did see a quick question come up in the chat. Will this session be available after the meeting? Yes, there will be a recording available of today's event. Everyone who registers and attends will receive a link to that recording along with a copy of the presentation. And in a few weeks' time, there will be an ebook published out of our time together today, and everyone who registers will also receive a copy of that ebook. So no worries about trying to rush and capture those screenshots or take furious notes. You will have access to the playback after the fact. And you'll get that within a couple of hours of our wrapping up our time together today. So with that, we're going to jump right into a little bit of the state of learning as it relates to just where are we in delivering on the promise of learning to the business. And in our learning and development benchmarking survey, which we ran at the beginning of 2023, almost a year ago now, we asked organizations, what are some of the big challenges that you're facing in trying to deliver on your promise? And the one that comes up most consistently is that ability to measure the effectiveness of our learning and also upskilling employees at the speed of business. And you go on down and you see things that we've all seen before: limited budget, limited staff, providing employees personalized learning to meet individual needs. And it goes on from there. And I think what's exciting about this that you and I've talked a little bit about, Jay, is there is the potential for AI to help us address all of those challenges.
Absolutely. In a few different ways as well. It not only analyzing the data, but presenting the data. I got to see some really cool previews to some of the things that we're working on. And if you think about where AI could go, generative AI, instead of spending all these times building reports and creating dashboards to get these insights, why don't we just ask a GPT type Copilot interface to build that for you? So think about, dynamically generating the right metrics to the right audiences at the right time. Being prepared for that to be the future state, I think, is something that's coming down the road. And we'll talk a little bit more about how we can build our skills to be ready for implementing and searching out those kinds of technologies. As we look at this slide, I did want to do a little throwback. I guess you did a previous webinar with a colleague of mine who runs our analytics function within Docebo. And he talks a little bit about, what I wanted to address with this slide here was the challenges of getting started. There's this whole ebook that was generated from that webinar. I threw a QR code if anybody wants to try to go grab it. This is just one little extract from that ebook. It goes into great detail on how to approach analytics and things that you can do. But it really all comes down to KPIs. So when we talk about measuring business impact of learning, you have to start with the use case, because the impact will be different depending on the context and the purpose of what the learning is. So Like, is the learning being developed for internal or external learners? Is the training required, or are we solving a business problem? Are we upskilling a workforce, fixing a broken process, changing a behavior? Each, whatever that use case is going to have a set of KPIs that you're going to want to target in order to get your measurement effective, effective and set up properly. So it all starts with the KPIs. We took a few use cases across the board. These are common use cases we use at Docebo for different types of training. And underneath that are example KPIs that could support those use cases. So just to kind of show the spectrum there and provide that resource.
Yeah, and it looks like we've run into a problem with the QR code. So if you are interested in this ebook, just comment ebook in the chat, and after the fact, we'll make sure that that gets out to you. And if we find the active link, someone will drop that in the chat as we go through today. So thanks for letting us know about that, and I really do apologize for that little hiccup. The other area that Jay, that you and I talked a little bit about is looking at our topic for today, which is content management, right? What From our learning and benchmarking survey, we asked folks, what is the mix of internally developed versus externally developed, or externally sourced or internally sourced content in your learning library? And so what we found on our benchmarking survey is about 67% of organizations are still sourcing primarily internal content versus 33% from the external. Now, as we got ready for today, we asked you, our audience, to weigh in on this topic from a couple of different perspectives. So let's take a look at what you all had to say about this this question. So the question we asked you in registration was, what's the mix of content sources in your current library? And here are the results. So mostly in-house content, a mix of both, but mostly in-house, just about half, a little bit more than half of you. All in-house generated content was about 28%. A mix of mostly outsourced content was much lower, which was about 19%. And then all outsourced content was the smallest group, just very few, about 2% in that mix. And that seems about right to me. That seems pretty consistent to what we see from the benchmarking study. And then let's look at this next one, where we asked you, what are the approaches that you're utilizing in your content strategy for learning? So 96% of us are still doing in-house content, which makes sense. That's why we have learning functions in our organizations. About 28% are allowing learner-generated content, and we're going to come back to that one in a little bit. And then just under half, 44%, are sourcing off-the-shelf content, and then about 40% are working with some sort of third-party content provider. So Jay, I know that this is something that caught your eye when we talk about content and the role of content within this modern learning environment. So what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, absolutely. We'll talk a little bit about AI and content generation a little later, which is an incredibly exciting area that is exploding right now. A lot of folks getting in that game. There's a lot of great things happening, and we'll take a look at some of that in a little bit. Maybe taking a step back on content generation as a whole. If you go look over all the years and you look at what it took to develop content. Many years ago, you needed to know what people were programming things in Flash, and they were developing these large simulations. And then you had the rise of all of the development tools that were easier to use. So I think what we're seeing here is sort of a settling in of the optimal scope of each of the two approaches. So if you look at user-generated content, this is because learning is getting more personalized. Companies and organizations have a lot more of their own information. All of this bespoke content starts to become easier to generate yourself rather than engaging a third party. I mean, people still do it, but think about engaging a third party. You have to teach them about your personal things, and then they can start making training, and then you have to check it. And then the communication lines are long. If you're targeting lower labor cost areas of the world, then communication and speed and understanding come into a factor, come into factors for your ability to get content out. Content has a shelf life. Can you do that fast enough when you introduce all those complexities? So what I think we're seeing settling out is that, well, there's a lot of content out there that's either generic, right? Say soft skills training, that's commonly outsourced. So you see that in commercial a lot. Because it's the same of your methodologies that you're teaching across different organizations. You also safety stuff was kinds of training we would never touch from a liability standpoint. Like I don't want my content creators deciding what OSHA standards are. OSHA, for folks not in the US, it's like our safety standards that the government has for workers. So those kinds of things with actual facts and figures and our HR content, we want to make sure that all those things are standard and that liability of that content is passed on. So I think that's what you're seeing there with the outsourced amount. And then
Yeah,
everything that's specific to an organization or business will make that in-house and optimize that content creation process.
absolutely. So then we just take a quick look at what are the technologies that folks are using. We called out the analytics tools because we're going to circle back to that in a little bit. But right now, priority courseware authoring, learning management systems, social learning and collaboration platforms, and on down the list. And as we talk about how AI factors into the tools that we use and the technologies that we use, what do you see in that data?
Yeah, I mean, I would target if I have an AI solution that I want to start using, I'm going to target the top utilized areas here. So I'm seeing it in content creation and in my learning management system. So what kind of things can we leverage with that technology to help me create content faster, with fewer resources, more personalized, or how can I use AI to automate different parts of my platform? Whether this is simple content recommendation of watching behaviors, all the way to maybe optimizing my entire experience in the platform because it knows who I am and why I'm there and is programmed with the right kind of data to create me the experience that I want. So this is the kind of thing, as we move forward into the AI topic, I want to kind of try to help, in these early parts, enable people to be able to start thinking about their approaches when they're looking for AI tools and technologies. So starting to focus in on some areas so that you can do that research, spin yourself up and be productive and successful, will be the target there. So I like how you highlighted learning analytics, because do we want to call out that it was our #1 challenge a few slides ago? And
Right.
if we ask people what they're doing right now, learning analytics is at the bottom. So I think we're starting or near the bottom, and we're starting to see maybe this answer to the challenge is starting to appear right before our eyes.
Yes. Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about learning modality as well, because that's another place where I think there's a lot to be gained by leveraging learning and deploying AI technology within the learning space. We asked you guys, the audience, in registration, which learning modalities are you using in any way in your organization today? And so you can see that right at the top, Jay, virtual instructor led, in-person instructor led, webinars, and asynchronous e-learning round out the top five. It's still the core of the learning experience for most of our participants today. And then below that, you've got some recording, virtual classrooms, some curated learning, cohort-based learning, learning generated content. So when we start talking about where does AI fit in this mix, what do you see when you look at this list?
Yeah, well, I mean, having a solid foundation and approach for the modality that we choose for the learning objectives we have will be a fundamental and important focus that we'll need to have so that data can be there as the foundation for whatever the AI is going to help us do and produce. I love seeing that bundle at the top because to me, from virtual instructor-led training all the way down to asynchronous e-learning, this is the blended learning experience that I think, having been in training development for 20 years, but we've been watching technology grow so that we can do more things over the internet with higher bandwidths and better experiences and technologies. That blended learning experience is what we've always kind of been chasing, that optimal thing. And it's nice to see that all rounding out here in the data.
And as we talk about learning modality, we paused briefly. This model, this is our learning performance convergence model from Brandon Hall Group that really talks about how your learning modality comes from what are your outcomes? What are the objectives? What are you trying to drive in the business with the learning activity? And that really should drive you to your performance objectives, your learning objectives, which drives you then to your learning modality. And when you have that clear process that you are using consistently and applying consistently, when it's time to introduce the automation, into that process, the more solid your process is, the more seamless that transition is going to be. All right, let's throw up a poll now. So the last area that we want to talk about, and then I'm gonna, Jay, take us on a little bit of a journey here when it comes to how do we even get started on this AI empowered process. Are you currently allowing user generated content in your learning program? And if you're not sure what I mean by user generated, what I'm really saying is anybody who's in the organization who is a learner, a consumer of your learning, are they empowered, enabled, and do they have a pathway for creating their own content that you are then able to leverage on behalf of the organization? So this could be everything from I'm recording a quick video tutorial because I figured out a shortcut in the billing system to short, cheat sheets or whatever or subject matter experts who are just creating their own content. All right. Yes, Hector, SMEs definitely count. Definitely count. All right, let's see how we're feeling about that. Do we currently allow user-generated content in our program? So not a lot of user-generated content yet from this group. About 73% are saying no right now. I'd be interested if you answered no to that. It'd be great if you'd throw some thoughts into the chat about what's kind of blocking that for your organization. I know where I worked in healthcare for a long time, and there was always a concern about validity or accuracy or the safety factor in healthcare practice around user generated content. That was always one thing that we came up against.
Yeah, for me, this is actually really nice to see. It draws attention to a care of quality over the benefits you get by crowdsourcing your material and opening it up to your users to bring material in. That's going to free up resources and make things cheaper and faster. And to see organizations holding, I think I saw trust go by in the comments as a
Yep.
reason, control, trust, all that kind of stuff. It's nice to see that is still being held, that integrity is still being held there, actually.
Yep. And I think that also goes back to this is one of those areas where AI can help with the process, right? Because if you create a pathway and you're leveraging a tool to evaluate user generated content that is submitted, and then the human interaction piece of it is I'm looking at what the AI is telling me about this content, and then does it look right to me? Does it meet our standards? Does it pass the test, so to speak? And then if I have any questions, I can still go in and look at it. And if the bandwidth isn't there to support that, that is another avenue that we can look for building that efficiency out. Awesome. And then, last sort of stop here. What kind of tools are you using to create your original training content? This again was asked of you, the audience today. Rapid authoring tools right at the top of the list, as we would expect. Embedded content tools in the LMS right behind that. Digital video following not too far beyond that. And then to a much lesser extent in the flow work tools like a WalkMe or that sort of thing. And then AR, VR and gaming and simulations, a smaller percentage beyond that. Awesome. So the real question now, and I'm going to kind of propel us forward a little bit. This analytics thing comes back. Accelerate using AI to accelerate content development this is from a study that we did towards the beginning of the summer, actually, around the role of generative AI, ChatGPT like tools in HR and the business and the broader business. So this was the take at the time of where are we using it? We're using it to on our training content delivery. We're using it on predictive analytics to a lesser extent, and writing and updating job descriptions. And at the same time, we expect that that technology is going to help us improve our employee experience and streamline processes and scale the business. And that's all right where we believe AI can have such a huge impact in learning, correct, Jay?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm an employee. I would like to improve my experience. This is where I lean in on the technology. We've all been part of this ChatGPT explosion that started for most of the mainstream folks at the beginning of last year. And we have everyone from kids to grandparents using it for all different reasons, whether it's recipes or creating things. And so I do think that's where it fits in the most, like helping you get that first 80-90% of what you're trying to do done, and then taking it from there and moving on rather than having to build things from scratch.
Yeah, absolutely. So with all of that said, and I think we've got the context really well in hand now. Let's talk about where we start with this journey. So I'm going to take us right to this first slide, Jay, and let's start talking about where do we go from here and how do we get into this process?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I'm going to jump into a couple slides. The goal here is there is one slide that we skipped, and there's absolutely no need to go back. The gist of it was that the top issue for folks surveyed was their lack of understanding is what was keeping them from really breaking into the AI side of things. Whether it's the tools or technologies, and really diving in. It's that, and I saw a couple comments go by as well with fear and of the technology and complexity again. So I'm hoping that over the next couple slides, I can help maybe give some avenues where we can break down some of those walls and get people going and getting in and exploring. And so to do that, let's start with some, global environmental variables that might be at play here. So if you look at the chart on the left, we can see that global birth rates have dramatically declined in the largest 15 countries by GDP, all have fertility rates below the replacement rate, which means people are aging out of the workforce faster than we can replace them. So that is one issue and challenge, followed by at the same time on the right, the second macro factor, which is the number of unfilled jobs versus people to fill them. So this is also leaving a critical gap where you have fewer people and more work. So this, I think, you have AI coming up and doing all of these things at the same time these issues are presenting themselves, and it's sort of a natural fit if we can do this all right. If we go to the next slide, I have another chart that really, this one really spoke to me a lot because it's got I'm a technology geek going back, and it's cool to see some trends here. So with this chart, what you're looking at is how fast over time it took AI to do things and do them at any level that we can start considering them actually doing the thing, then when they hit the rate that humans do it, and then when they outpace humans doing this task. And if you look at the first one, I think the chart calls it handwriting recognition. A lot of us know that as OCR, optical character recognition. Look at the time it took for AI to become good at OCR. And if you've been, 90s, 2000s on technology, getting handwriting recognized, and it seemed like it took forever to really get there and get that good quality. And then I'm not going to read every single one, but let's slide, towards the right of this chart. Look at the rate at which these tasks are not only going from, hey, I want AI to tackle this task to, oh yeah, it can do it, to it can do it as well as a human, and then beyond. The time it's taking to ramp is really condensing down, which I think is leading also to this situation that we're seeing and that we're in. So some really cool data and callouts here in these charts. I just wanted to show everybody to set the scene, because if we go on to the next one and we're feeling like there's complexities here, I have a lack of understanding, I don't know what to do, people are talking about this, I want to know more, where do we kind of start to get involved? And I'm not going to be able to tell you all that in 20 minutes. I'm going to scratch the surface a little bit, give you some fundamentals, and then some resources that you can use in the future. But let's start with just fundamentally, I think you touched this a little before. There's AI as a solution to something, and then there's an AI for what we all here would really care about as AI as a learning solution. So for example, and I'm not going to read the text there, but for example, an AI contract review solution might increase productivity and efficiency for a legal team, but it's not going to do anything for the learning and development team. Because it's not set out on that specific task, armed with those parameters, that data, the right types of technologies underlying the AI that's going on. So just when everyone's talking about AI in a generic fashion, and then you're starting to dive into it, knowing that you're going to need to start focusing on specializing and on different characteristics and parts of the technology is the first step in trying to dissect the thing as a whole, understand it, and move forward with it. So in this case of the legal team, not just any AI solution will do, we're going to need L&D teams to start using learning AI solutions. Go on to the next. So what are the challenges that are happening with AI? And I'm going to take a quick detour from this presentation in a second. There's the biggest things that I think that we all, anybody who's played around with it can know, is that the lack of transparency that's happening. So it can feel a little bit like magic. You can sometimes get results without knowing or understanding how the AI arrived at them. And that's really not okay. We need to pay, especially for training and learning, we need to pay attention to what's happening, or in this case of AI, what's happening inside what we're calling like this black box problem. What's going on in the black box? Because it can cause, things like difficulty debugging. If you're having an output that you don't understand how it arrived at that conclusion, how can you do any kind of troubleshooting or debugging? Ethical concerns, like what criteria is an AI using to make critical decision? So this kind of describes the AI black box problem. And if I'm going to take a second to steal the share, and I'll show you just on a little fun side note, what can happen when it really goes off the rails.
And this is going to take us right into the heart of some of the questions and comments that are flying through the chat. So, Jay, let's tell the story and let's
Real quick,
show folks kind of what your experience was, and then let's talk about the
sounds good.
implications for that for our learning teams.
So I had this meme come across, and I happened to be in ChatGPT doing something completely different when this thing came across. And depending on the age of the folks on here, you're going to either get this right away. But I was like, oh, maybe this. What happened if I threw this into ChatGPT? So I went quick and dirty. I just threw the ChatGPT conversation in this Word document, and I was like, hey, ChatGPT, I need you to solve this Wheel of Fortune puzzle. It's an 80s song lyrics as the category, and I started to describe it as 10 words. First one's 5 letters, second one's 5 letters, third one's 4 letters. It comes right back. Oh yeah, every breath you take by the police. Every 5 letters, breath, 5 letters. You, 4 letters. Wait a minute. Not only is that not the song, but I said, ChatGPT, I start talking to it like it's my kid brother or best buddy here. I'm like, look at number 3. Is you really 4 letters? And then it gets into this whole, oh, I apologize. You're right. You is not 4 letters, it's 3 letters. Let's revise the answer. So then it just revised the answer to you being 3 letters, and that wasn't even the puzzle in the first place. And I'm telling you, I'm just going to scroll. This went on and on. It was like, yeah, it's Sweet Child of Mine by Guns N' Roses. It's With or Without You by U2. And then we start really going off the. I was like, it's finally like, Don't Stop Believing by Journey. Don't 5 letters. Stop 4 letters. Believe is not even a word. It's chopping up words in half. So this is how it can really get off the rails. A funny end to this story was once I figured out, and everybody who probably has all said it in the chat by now, it's never going to give you up, never going to let you down. Or the lyrics, it's the Rick roll meme that people see, which is the whole joke of the thing. But I came back to ChatGPT and I said, I figured it out. I'd like to give you the answer. Would you like to know? And ChatGPT says, yeah, I do want to know the answer. So I told it, and it said, thank you, blah, blah, blah. I appreciate your patience, and I'm glad we were able to figure this out and solve the puzzle. I was like, listen, we didn't do that, right? So another funny like close to this is that I had just invested some time here with ChatGPT, and I wanted to know, are you still going to make this mistake now that we've been on this journey together? And it came back and it said, yeah, I will still make the mistake. And if people on the call, I don't know how deep, we probably have some crazy AI experts and some fresh AI folks in there. But if you don't know, it tells me right back, yeah, I'm going to make this mistake again because it's not allowed to learn from my interactions. It can learn from my interactions when it gives me more interactions, but it can't learn from my interactions and then give it to the masses. And I think we probably all agree that that would be pretty bad if any, buddy off the street can start teaching ChatGPT stuff. So yeah, it was pretty funny. This is an example of the you might be calling them hallucinations. I was with one of my Italian colleagues last night who was speaking, he speaks beautiful Italian. The English is a second language, and he was calling them fantasies. I love that, AI fantasies instead of hallucinations. But these are the things that are describing the limitations of the technology right now. So understanding what they are and how to mitigate them as best as possible is the key.
Absolutely. And after the fact, Jay, you must go back and scroll through the chat because the reaction to that little example was absolutely classic and a lot of fun for a
Nice.
Thursday afternoon. So one of the questions that did pop up in the chat roll earlier on was using ChatGPT and the mistakes it makes and the limitations that puts on us as learning professionals to leverage it for content development. So I know you're going to go into these strategies, but I'd love just kind of off the top, off the cuff a little bit. What's your reaction to that concern?
No, it's a 100% valid concern. I think when ChatGPT became really popular and you had a lot of people bringing these ideas to leaders in their companies, the typically IT professionals, at the first town halls after it really went mainstream, people were like, how can we use ChatGPT to solve all our customer service problems? How can we use ChatGPT, right? And the IT response right off the bat was, whoa, 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 wait a minute. Before we start doing and implementing that as our front end, we have to make sure our data is good and what we're plugging it into is going to create successful outcomes. And so whether you're building a data set, you're building a fundamental framework of AI technology, this will get really deep and we don't have the time to go into all the ways, but no matter how complex you're taking your AI implementation, doing it in a way where you have, and that's what this slide is about, some strategies where you have some strategies in place. And one of the ones, Docebo is taking, and what we're working on here is, the principles to mitigate this. It needs to be inspectable, it needs to be explainable, and it needs to be overridable. So when you're looking at a technology for AI and it's making you something out of that magic box, while it's doing it, can I go in and poke around at what it's connected to and where it's getting its information? And when I do that, can it explain to me why it picked the things it picked to give me what it's going to give me? And then finally, if I don't like the things it picked, what can I do to override that and give it a different choice? right? So this is the relationship that you should be having with the AI and the fundamental principles you should be putting behind it so that you get the outcome you want consistently and you can trust it to be your front face.
I think it's interesting. Someone just made a comment about being detailed and concise when you're prompting the AI. That has absolutely been my personal experience as well. I've asked various AI, generative AI platforms questions to help spark me on my work journey, and some of the stuff I get back, I'm like, that's not even what I asked you. And then
Yes.
I've learned how to ask more precisely. This is what I'm looking for in this context, you know, with this language level or whatever the case may be. And the more specific and clear I can be, the better the response that I tend to get back. And that's where I think for those of us in the learning world, thinking about who our technology partners are and how they are tapping into the power of AI within the tools that we are already using is going to make a huge difference in how we move forward. And I know that that's something that is top of mind for you guys at Docebo too.
Yeah, 100%. I really like how you brought up the prompting and focus on that. And so if we're a lot of training professionals on here, a lot of content creators, you know, in my day when I had my hands in content creation, learning extra skills like video production and animation were the complementary skill sets that I was building on to my instructional design. Whereas what you just described in the age we're moving into, hey, maybe prompt engineering, like is what you're talking about, maybe
Right.
that's a kind of something I want to lean in and build onto my skill set as an instructional designer in order to, you know, be what we need tomorrow when these things are everywhere.
Absolutely. And so let's take a look at what that might look like in practice. So I know we've got a brief video that's going to come up on the screen
Yep.
that is going to talk a little bit about this.
To introduce
Yes.
you the new version of Shape. And so just to give you a use case, this is a system that we built with the sales enablement team of Docebo. So it's right now an internal tool where we uploaded all the sales enablement content from Docebo. So let's meet Sarah. Sarah is a content creator in the sales enablement team, and she wants to create a talk track for elevator pitch. So she wants to create content. So she can find different templates. For example, she can select the talk track templates. Here she can preview what will be the output of this template. For example, we're going to be content, some activities, and also simulation. So Sarah decides to use this template, and here you have a new interface. This is, we call it a copilot. So this is a new authoring flow where Sarah can talk to the AI system and being able, in a very natural way, to tell to the system what she wants to create. So she can select elevator pitch, and as well what kind of product you want to cover, and for example, Docebo Learning Impact. The AI system has access to a knowledge base and is able to give those suggestions to Sarah because it knows about Docebo and knows about all about the products of Docebo. Sarah can go deeper in the topic selection. For example, for the target audience will be L&D manager and so on and so forth. Once she's satisfied with the topic of the content, she can go to the next stage. And here we have our AI brain that will be able to recall all different documents that right now are unstructured documents. Using the power of AI, we're able to do what's called a semantic search. So we're not only searching for keywords, but searching for pieces of information that represents the specific content that Sarah wants to tackle. And here we can see that already the system has been splitting the topics and creating basically a structure of what will be the output content. So Sarah, of course, can review it, being able to make sure that the content is accurate. And once she's satisfied with that, just press next. By the way, this is super important because if you guys use ChatGPT, sometimes it hallucinates, so things are not grounded to reality. And this way, actually, we can make sure that it's talking the truth. So after a few seconds, the magic happens. So a full learning experience has been created, where at the beginning you have all the learning content that is structured with a specific pedagogical approach. And then you have also learning activities that has been completely generated by AI. So those are learning activities that are created from scratch by AI that's follow a specific pedagogical structure. And then last but not least, we have the final activity, which is what we call a virtual role play or a simulation. So you, the learner, once you learn all these new concepts and practice with the activities, can then go in a real scenario, and now we can practice elevator pitch with L&D manager. And so here the AI system is able to simulate what will be a real customer, and therefore the learner is able to have a natural conversation. Very important that we work in order to make the conversation seem natural, so the speed and latency of the speech to text is very fast, and therefore the learner is able to speak naturally with the AI agent, and the AI agent is replying in a way that actually simulates a real conversation that customers will have, because we also integrated in the AI brain Gong transcripts that actually really simulate what is a real conversation for a customer. After the simulation is completed, you can see that the AI system is capable of creating automatically an assessment report. So the assessment report is following the specific parameters and configuration that are from the sales enablement team. And so we are actually embedding those rubrics into the report. So you can see that the AI system is capable of giving different kind of assessment in some criteria that are also like on the semantic base. So if you actually like manage to pitch different parts of the product, so you can see like there is, for example, introduction, common challenges, which I didn't perform very well, but then company benefit was pretty good in that. So you can see, of course, these assessment reports are also created by AI and can be customized to different use cases. So the possibilities are endless in terms of the kind of use cases for this. Here it's very important that we have also areas for growth, so the learner can go back and then repeat the simulation in order to be able to improve without any specific problems, because you're talking to an AI system.
Yeah, so this was something that we showed at our user conference a few months ago. That person that was speaking was Giuseppe. He's our VP of AI and actually was the leader of Edugo, which was the company that we acquired that were, their teams and their technologies and all the great, amazing things that they've put together using AI for language learning, we're implementing into the platform. First use case was sales, just to prove out how that would look. And I hope people were able to take away that it followed a similar process to what I was trying to describe before, plugging it into the right things so that, it has an accurate source of truth, having that inspectability, overrideability, being able to control what it's doing and why it's doing it, and then having it create these personalized interactions for you. And if you think about, that is just the beginning. Someday where this could go, if you could imagine training content being generated for the learner at the time of need for whatever they need, that could have implications to goodbye content libraries and creation and maintenance altogether. If you're just giving an AI the fundamental capability to produce anything you need with certain pedagogical guardrails around it, it would be an amazing space to have everything move into. So I'll end here. This is my last slide with a chart that if I'm trying to be comfortable with that world that I'm moving into, and I want to be part of it, how can I fit and where do I fit? If you look at this chart on the left, what we try to say is, okay, well, that's like today, right? I'm just the designer. I don't want any AI involvement. I have full control. And as I slide to the right, I'm adding in AI tools that do a little bit more and more of the work for me until you get all the way to the end, which is complete full automation. I'm out of it. Now that required a whole bunch more fundamental and different AI-based skill sets to set up the engine that will do all that stuff automatically. And I don't have to deal with all of the stuff that's happening one-to-one. It's on full automation and cruise control mode, but it's a very different set of control and set of skill sets to manage that world as it is all the way down. And you don't have to be on either extreme. This can grow with your organization as you implement different types of technologies. So Matt, you earlier brought up knowing how to do the right prompts and influence the tool you're using to produce the results you want. That's essentially what's happening at every stage of this game for additional pieces of functionality along the way.
Right. And I think that one of the big takeaways that I would encourage folks that are in the audience today is to keep in mind that the promise of AI and the experience of AI are still merging, right? We are on the front end of the promise, and there's a lot more now that we can do with AI tools and AI driven and supported processes than we could even a year ago. But we are not yet at the point where AI flips the switch, and we're all the way to the far right of this chart that Jay's slide shows. We aren't there yet, and so it's interesting. There's been some chatter in the chat about the security concerns and the data accuracy concerns and the business policies that you even talked a little bit to about, Jay, where we're not going to use content generated by a chat GPT or whatever to because we can't control it. We don't want to expose our data to discovery and all of those other pieces. And what I would introduce into that conversation is the use case for leveraging AI technology includes those security concerns and those accuracy measures and how you implement and utilize the tool within your process. I don't think anyone is advocating, at least those of us from inside the industry, we're not advocating that you abdicate your entire content creation process to an AI tool with no oversight and no QA check and no risk management around it at all. What we are saying is to wholesale dismiss the power and the value of an AI technology in your work is not in keeping with the progress that the technology and that the industry is making. And so,
absolutely. I mean, we've all seen people. There was a time people wouldn't trust running their credit cards on a website, right? And then you had moving from the flip phones to the smartphones and the adoption of technology. This is a common thing. And until the right checks and balances are in place, I think we will see that slowly move along. And it's going to have different paces around the world. Some countries are way more strict with data privacy policies and things like that when it comes to these kind of technologies. AI is going to be lagging behind in some places than others, but really understanding its challenges, limitations, and strengths, and then explaining it and having that kind of documentation available with those solutions that can explain what it's doing and why. I think if you have that and you have the conversations with your IT departments and professionals, it's more about that transparency and that relationship instead of buying something and finding an AI solution, buying it, and then just bringing it to your organization. And that's when you get the quick no, right? Because they weren't involved in the process early in the areas they needed to be involved in. And how do you, as the training professional that are going and looking at these tools, know you even had to involve them in the first place? So hopefully this has brought a little bit of that kind of information to you to say, at least raise a flag to say, maybe I got to go learn more about that. We are, one of my colleagues who's responsible for our product marketing for a lot of our AI products is speaking. His name's Vince at Docebo. He's speaking at the Learn 2023 conference in Orlando in December. Some of this stuff I pulled comes out of his even deeper dive into this. And it gets, if you're really serious and you want to know, like, how can I practically start to apply this to this? Definitely, look that up on LinkedIn. You can get connected with it. You can get copies of that material. We're happy to share everything we're doing. We are setting up a thought leadership output for our material so that all of this stuff can be shared. This is not really to set an account. I would say follow. I just saw a LinkedIn account thing go by. Just follow our LinkedIn account for now, and then we'll connect you to where that web property will live. But we're really trying to bring in non-salesy thought leadership information around this topic so that people we can start to democratize this, and just want to see people making the right decisions that work for them and make them successful.
Absolutely. And just circling back, this is still a great time to submit questions if you've got things that are still top of mind that maybe we haven't quite touched on just yet. I want to circle back to a couple that were in the QA one about you must have the is one of the main takeaways. You must have the correct data and consistency streamlined in your content delivery in order to integrate AI automation. You know, Jay, my reaction to that is you don't have to, but it's
Right.
definitely going to make that integration easier.
Right. I mean, this essentially that is garbage in, garbage out, is what that comes down to. So, and it's definitely way more technical than that. Like understanding the way some of these tools will interface with other tools, pull data from databases, those kinds of just fundamental connection parameters. And if this starts to get over your head as a training person and you didn't really get into the IT side of things, find an IT business partner early, find somebody with those technical skills, partner up together, and each bring that piece to the table so that you can set those kind of things up, and make sure that it's not just a shiny demo of something that gets you to buy something. It's actually that you have your requirements out there and you've found a tool that's going to do that for you. And then if you're the one who's in charge of that platform, I think you're going to be really successful wherever you are.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there are there's one. Okay, so there's several questions people asking about the video and when will the platform reflect that functionality. So if you want to point them to a URL, or if you know the answer to that question, real quick, Jay, you
Yes.
can answer that for your Docebo friends that are on the call.
Sure. So what I can say for now is that our AI incorporation into the different areas of the platform, both in the LMS for different types of tasks other than we saw today, some of that does exist already. And then as far as what you just saw there, where it was integrated into our content authoring product, that is something that's targeted for next year. So realize, again, to call this back to AI as a technology, remember when I talked about AI or AI for learning, well, that has subsets too. AI has to work on a use case basis. So what you saw there was a commercial training example where we were teaching somebody how to deliver a talk track for a certain product. So sales enablement is the first area of focus for AI within that tool. So expect to see that you'll see those types of abilities with AI and content creation around the sales use case first, and then it will go further from there. And all of this is scheduled to take place next year. That's what we talked about at Inspire. So I'd say, look, make sure you stay on top of our website and our LinkedIn social media. We will definitely be screaming it from the mountaintops when we release this stuff.
That's excellent. And so anybody that's got any more specific questions about the Docebo platform and product and how they work, head to their website and check that out. And I am sure they are more than willing and ready to help answer those questions for you.
Of course.
I am going to circle back. There's one kind of aging question that I'm putting in the context of the user generated content, and I just want to call it out because it actually is something that's a personal um, point for me as a 30-year learning professional. So I've got a couple of years on you, Jay. There's a comment is there seems to be quote unquote control issues from LMS teams. And this again, I think is around that question of user generated content. And here's what I'll say about that. There should be control issues with your LMS teams in what gets into your system and what gets in front of your learners, because that's the team that's responsible for the quality, that's accountable for the functionality and for the consistency of the messaging and the alignment of your learning strategy across your organization. And as more and more technology tools come online and learning is more and more directly tied to the day-to-day success of the business, which we all have always known that's what we drive, that's what we support. The thing about it is we in the learning team are going to need to become the architects and place the guardrails and be the ones that are keeping us all moving in the right direction. And so you're likely to have that need for some sort of gatekeeping when it comes to that user generated content question. So yes, that you probably are seeing control issues, but that's really why we're the gatekeepers, we're the architects of the success when it comes to learning and performance. And that's what we want to be able to, that's what we encourage you to become in your role wherever you sit in the organization. So thank you so much for joining us today. I want to thank Jay Colvinson from Docebo for this informative, interesting conversation and deep dive. And there are many more to come. Brandon Hall Group has had a series of webinars touching on various aspects of the role of AI in learning and performance. So go to our webinar site and check those recordings out. Jay, enjoy Italy.
Thank you.
Safe travels home, and thank you again.
Appreciate it. No, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for spending time with me. Really appreciate it.
Have a great rest of your day or evening wherever you are in the world, folks. Take care.